The grand ballroom of a luxury hotel in New York was glowing with warm lights, and laughter-soft music played in the background. As old classmates reunited after many years, waiters moved gracefully through the crowd with trays of drinks, and everywhere people were hugging, smiling and sharing stories about how life had changed since their younger days. Among the crowd stood Emma. She wore a simple but elegant, light blue dress that gently rested over her growing baby bump. One hand rested on her stomach, as if she was quietly comforting the little life inside her. The room was filled with confident, successful people, yet Emma looked slightly nervous. She had not wanted to attend the reunion, but her husband, Ryan, insisted it would be good for appearances. Ryan, however, seemed far from happy to be there with her. He stood beside her, scrolling through his phone, barely paying attention to anything she said. Every now and then he forced a smile when someone greeted him, but the irritation on his face was hard to hide. Soon a group of their old friends gathered around them. "Emma, it's been years," one woman said excitedly, "and look at you. You're going to be a mom." Emma smiled politely. "Yes, the baby is due in a few months." Everyone congratulated her warmly. For a moment, the atmosphere felt kind and joyful. Emma began to relax slightly, thinking maybe the night would pass peacefully after all. But Ryan suddenly laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh, it was sharp and careless. "Well, yeah," he said loudly, raising his glass. "Apparently my freedom had to end sooner or later." The group fell quiet. Ryan continued speaking as if he were telling a joke. "You know how it is, one minute you're enjoying life and the next minute, boom, you're about to be a dad, whether you planned it or not." A few people exchanged uncomfortable looks. Emma felt her cheeks grow hot with embarrassment. She forced a weak smile, hoping Ryan would stop talking, but he didn't, honestly. Ryan added with a shrug, "Having a pregnant wife changes everything. No fun, no travel, just responsibilities." Someone tried to laugh awkwardly, but the joke didn't land. Emma looked down at the floor, blinking quickly as her eyes filled with tears. She didn't want anyone to see. She placed a protective hand over her stomach, silently reminding herself to stay calm. The room felt suddenly smaller. Conversations around them slowed as people sensed attention. Some guests pretended to check their phones, while others quietly stepped away. Ryan, however, seemed completely unaware, or perhaps he simply didn't care. Emma took a slow breath, trying to keep her emotions under control. She had always believed marriage meant supporting each other, especially during important moments like this, but tonight, standing in a crowded ballroom while her husband mocked her pregnancy, she had never felt more alone just then. The large double doors at the entrance of the ballroom slowly opened. A tall man in a perfectly tailored black suit stepped inside. His presence was calm but powerful, the kind that naturally made people turn their heads. He walked with quiet confidence, his sharp eyes scanning the room. Many guests didn't recognize him, but Emma did. Her body froze instantly. The color drained from her face as she stared toward the entrance. After years of silence and distance, the man standing there was someone she never expected to see again. It was her father. Emma's heart began to pound. The moment she recognized the man, standing at the entrance of the ballroom, for a few seconds everything around her seemed to fade. The music, the conversations, even Ryan's voice. All she could see was her father slowly walking into the room. Mr. Harrison, the powerful billionaire businessman, whose name often appeared in financial magazines and news headlines. The man known for building one of the largest investment companies in the country, but to Emma he was simply the father she hadn't spoken to in years. Memories rushed through her mind. Years ago, when Emma decided to marry Ryan, her father strongly opposed the relationship. He believed Ryan was irresponsible and not serious about life. Emma, however, was deeply in love, and convinced that love mattered more than money or status. After a painful argument, she left her father's luxurious home and chose to start a simple life with Ryan. Since that day, there had been silence between them. No phone calls, no visits, nothing. Seeing him now standing in the same room after all these years made Emma's chest tighten with mixed emotions: shock, nervousness, and a quiet sadness. Ryan noticed the change in her expression. He followed her gaze toward the entrance and saw the tall man approaching. At first, he didn't recognize him, but when someone nearby whispered the name Harrison, Ryan's eyebrows lifted in surprise. Then a slow, mocking smile spread across his face. "Well, well," Ryan muttered under his breath. "Looks like the famous billionaire finally showed up." Emma quickly looked at him. "Ryan, please," she whispered nervously. "Don't start anything." But Ryan ignored her. As Mr. Harrison continued walking through the crowd, a few guests began whispering among themselves. Some clearly recognized the wealthy businessman and watched with curiosity. Ryan leaned closer to Emma and spoke quietly, though the sarcasm in his voice was obvious. "Perfect timing," he said. "Now your rich dad can see what kind of life you chose." Emma felt a sharp sting in her chest. "Ryan, stop," she said softly, but he continued. His voice slightly louder. "Now I mean seriously," he said with a careless chuckle. "You left a billionaire family for this life? Small apartment bills, responsibilities, and now a baby." A few nearby guests shifted uncomfortably. Emma felt their eyes on her. The humiliation from earlier was returning, heavier than before. She lowered her head, wishing the floor would open and swallow her whole. Across the room, Mr. Harrison had nearly reached them. His sharp, observant eyes quietly took in the scene, the uncomfortable faces, Emma's lowered head, and Ryan speaking with careless arrogance. He slowed his steps, though he had just arrived. It didn't take long for him to sense that something wasn't right. Ryan, meanwhile, continued talking, as if he were performing for the small crowd that had gathered. "Honestly," he said with a shrug, "I'm the one carrying most of the responsibility now. Work, bills, everything. Being a husband isn't exactly easy." Emma's hands tightened slightly. The words hurt more than she expected. Just then, Mr. Harrison finally stopped directly in front of them. The conversations around them faded into silence. For the first time that night, Ryan stopped speaking. He looked at the tall, composed man standing before him. Mr. Harrison's expression was calm, but his eyes were cold and sharp, and when he spoke, his deep voice cut through the quiet room like thunder. "Enough." The single word hung in the air like a sudden crack of thunder. Enough. The quiet but powerful voice instantly silenced the small crowd gathered around them. Conversations across the ballroom slowed as more people turned their attention toward the tense scene. Ryan blinked, slightly surprised. For a brief moment, he wasn't sure how to respond. Then he forced a small laugh. "Trying to act confident? Oh, Mr. Harrison, right?" Ryan said casually, straightening his jacket. "I didn't expect to see you here." But Mr. Harrison didn't smile. His sharp eyes moved slowly from Ryan to Emma. The moment he saw his daughter's lowered head and the tears shining in her eyes, something in his expression hardened. For years he had stayed away, believing Emma had made her own choice and should live her own life. But seeing her standing there pregnant, embarrassed and clearly hurt, made that distance feel suddenly unbearable. Without saying a word, he stepped closer. Ryan crossed his arms, trying to maintain his confident attitude. "Well," Ryan continued, "I guess you heard a bit of our conversation. We were just joking around." Mr. Harrison didn't look at him yet. Instead, he gently placed one hand on Emma's shoulder. The simple gesture shocked her. Emma slowly lifted her head, her eyes wide with surprise. She hadn't felt her father's comforting touch in years. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Mr. Harrison's voice softened slightly as he spoke. "Emma," he said quietly. Hearing her name from him again made her throat tighten. But before she could respond, Mr. Harrison finally turned toward Ryan. The calmness in his face returned, but the authority in his presence was unmistakable. "This woman you're humiliating," he said slowly, "is the strongest person I know." Ryan's confident smile faded a little. The guests nearby began whispering quietly. Mr. Harrison continued speaking, his voice steady and clear so everyone could hear. "She walked away from a life of wealth and comfort," he said, "not because she was forced to, but because she believed in love." Emma's eyes widened. She never expected her father to say something like that. Ryan shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the people around them who were now listening closely. Mr. Harrison went on. "She gave up opportunities, security, and the future I had prepared for her. He said all because she trusted the man she chose to marry." A murmur moved through the small crowd. Ryan quickly tried to interrupt. "Look, I think you're misunderstanding." But Mr. Harrison raised his hand slightly. Ryan stopped speaking immediately. The room had grown so quiet that even the music in the background felt distant. Mr. Harrison's gaze sharpened as he looked directly at Ryan, and yet he continued instead of respecting that sacrifice. "You stand here mocking her in front of strangers, while she is carrying your child." Ryan swallowed, clearly feeling the pressure of the attention around him. Emma felt her heart beating faster. For the first time that night, she didn't feel small or embarrassed. Her father's words had shifted the entire atmosphere of the room. Guests who had been awkwardly watching earlier were now looking at Ryan with clear disapproval. Ryan tried to recover his confidence. He forced another laugh, though it sounded much weaker than before. "You're making this sound dramatic. He said it's just marriage problems." Mr. Harrison's eyes narrowed slightly. The silence in the room grew even heavier, and then he spoke again, his voice colder than before. "Marriage problems?" he repeated slowly. He took one step closer to Ryan. "No," he said firmly, "this is called disrespect." The word disrespect echoed through the quiet ballroom. Ryan's confident posture slowly weakened, under the weight of everyone's attention. Moments ago, he had been laughing and mocking his wife, believing the situation was nothing more than harmless conversation. Now the room felt completely different. Dozens of eyes were fixed on him. Mr. Harrison stood tall in front of him, calm yet commanding, his presence filling the space with silent authority. Ryan cleared his throat, attempting to regain control of the situation. "Look," he said awkwardly, forcing a small smile, "I think this is being blown out of proportion. Every couple argues it's normal." But the words didn't convince anyone. Several guests quietly exchanged looks of disapproval. Mr. Harrison studied Ryan for a long moment before speaking again. "And remember something important," he said slowly. The room remained perfectly still. "My daughter may have chosen to leave my fortune," he continued, "but she never lost my support." Ryan's expression stiffened. Emma looked at her father in surprise. She had spent years believing he had completely turned his back on her. After she left home, hearing those words now felt almost unreal. Mr. Harrison's voice grew firmer. "You see," he continued, "wealth can be rebuilt. Businesses can rise and fall. But respect for family, that is something no decent person should ever lose." Ryan shifted his weight uncomfortably. The confident man who had been joking earlier was now visibly nervous. Mr. Harrison stepped slightly closer. "If you cannot respect the woman standing beside you," he said, "then you do not deserve the privilege of being her husband." A quiet murmur spread across the crowd. Ryan opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. Mr. Harrison's gaze then moved briefly toward Emma's stomach. "And you certainly do not deserve the honor of being the father of her child." Emma's hand instinctively rested on her baby bump. Her heart felt full of emotions she could barely describe: relief, shock, and a deep sense of strength she hadn't felt earlier that night. Ryan looked around the room, realizing the situation had completely turned against him. People who had laughed at his jokes before were now staring at him with disappointment. The silence was almost unbearable. Mr. Harrison finally turned toward Emma. His expression softened again, the strict businessman disappearing for a moment. Replaced by a concerned father, Emma, he said gently, "You don't have to stand here and tolerate this." Emma looked into his eyes. For years, she had believed she had lost her father forever. But in this moment, she saw something she hadn't seen since she was young. His quiet protection slowly. She nodded. Mr. Harrison offered his arm to her. "Come," he said calmly. Emma accepted it together. They began walking toward the exit of the ballroom. The crowd instinctively stepped aside, creating a clear path for them. Ryan remained standing where he was speechless. No one tried to defend him. No one laughed anymore for the first time that night. He fully understood what had just happened. By humiliating Emma in front of everyone, he hadn't made himself look strong. Instead, he had revealed something far worse. And as he watched Emma walk away with her father, Ryan realized too late that the respect he had taken for granted might be something he would never get back again.